Something shifted the moment they stepped forward. Not the crowd, not the cameras, not the carefully arranged pageantry that has framed every royal appearance for a century. Something deeper moved, and the people watching felt it before they could name it. William and Catherine arrived at a public engagement that, on paper, looked like every other: scheduled, controlled, symbolic. It was none of those things. Those who were there described it the same way, separately, without comparing notes. They said it didn't feel like a royal visit. It felt like an arrival, the kind that only happens once. But what exactly did the world witness that day? And why are palace insiders calling it the clearest signal the monarchy has sent in years? Do you think Britain is ready for William and Catherine's era? Tell us in the comments, because what happened next, behind the smiles, behind the ceremony, changed something that cannot be unchanged. It wasn't one moment, it was everything at once. William moved through the engagement with a stillness that read differently than it ever had before. Not restrained, not careful, settled, the way a man moves when he is no longer waiting for permission. Catherine beside him carried something similar, a quiet certainty that required no announcement, every gesture precise, every pause intentional. Royal observers who have followed this family for decades noted it immediately. The word they kept using, separately, was the same: ready. Not preparing, not transitioning, ready. And that distinction, small as it sounds, is everything. Because this wasn't the William and Catherine the world grew up watching. Something had changed in how they occupied the room, how they occupied the moment. But that change didn't happen by accident. Someone made sure the world would see it. So who gave the signal, and why did it happen now?
The answer begins with King Charles. In the months leading up to this appearance, sources close to the palace reported a shift in how Charles was approaching his reign. His health had remained a quiet but persistent topic inside royal circles since his cancer diagnosis became public in early 2024. And those closest to the institution say it sharpened his focus considerably. Not on himself, on what comes after. Senior royal commentators reported that Charles had grown increasingly deliberate about how William and Catherine were being positioned, not in the distant future, but right now, publicly, visibly, without ambiguity. This appearance was part of that strategy. The timing was not coincidental, the venue was not random. Even the details of how William and Catherine were framed, physically, ceremonially, symbolically, had been considered in advance. But Charles didn't just plan an appearance. Reports suggest he arranged something specific, something that would be impossible to misread. What was it, and what happened the moment it unfolded? There was a point during the engagement when the atmosphere changed. Cameras caught it, crowds felt it. Even the most seasoned royal correspondents, people who have covered this family through funerals, scandals, and coronations, described it the same way afterwards. A pause that didn't feel like a pause, a moment that felt like a conclusion. King Charles, in full public view, stepped toward his son and daughter-in-law in a manner that went beyond ceremony. The gesture was small, the meaning was not. What the cameras recorded was reported widely as something the monarchy had not offered this openly in years, a visible, unambiguous transfer of weight. Not the crown itself, something harder to hand over: confidence, trust, primacy. William did not reach for it, it was placed on him. Catherine stood beside him, and in that instant, observers reported, the question of what this couple represents stopped being theoretical. The world had just watched the future step forward, and it didn't look like waiting anymore. But here is what most people missed: what happened in the hours that followed. By the time the engagement ended, the reaction had already begun. Crowds who attended described an atmosphere that didn't dissipate when the cars pulled away. People stayed, they talked. A woman who had stood near the front told a reporter she couldn't explain it, only that it felt different.
that she had seen royals before, many times, and this felt like something else. Media coverage followed quickly. Commentators who had spent years describing William and Catherine as the monarchy's future reached almost unanimously for a different word: present. Inside palace circles, sources described the mood not as surprise, but as relief. This had been building. What the public saw that day was not the beginning of the shift, it was the moment the shift became impossible to deny. One veteran royal correspondent, speaking on broadcast, said something that cut through the noise. She said the monarchy had just reminded the world why it still matters. But if this was the confirmation, what exactly does it set in motion next?
History rarely sends formal notice. It doesn't issue statements or schedule press conferences. It simply creates a moment, charged, irreversible, and clear, and leaves people to understand what they witnessed only after the fact. What Britain royals watched that day was exactly that kind of moment. William and Catherine did not claim anything. They did not declare or demand. They simply stood, composed, prepared, and present, while the weight of something much larger than a single appearance settled visibly around them. King Charles has spent years quietly building toward this. His health challenges, reported publicly and handled with characteristic restraint, appear to have accelerated a transition he had already decided to make on his own terms. The result is a monarchy that looks less divided than it has in years, anchored by a couple that the public, the press, and the palace have all, in their own way, now acknowledged. The shift is complete, not official, but understood. And that matters, because what comes next will be shaped by what was established here. There are already reports of new royal engagements being structured differently. Roles inside the palace, sources suggest, continue to be quietly realigned, and one upcoming appearance, still unconfirmed, still being negotiated behind closed doors, could make what the world witnessed today look like a rehearsal. Britain royals will have that story. Make sure you're here when it breaks. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bells so you do not miss the next one.